Welcome to the show. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel and give us a like so we can know what sort of content you enjoy. But today we're bringing you something very interesting. There's been many sort of PR marketing fiascos in the market, and we're always here to show you how to do it better or how it should be done, especially in today's world. So I won't mention the company for privacy reasons, but I'll walk you through a PR campaign plan and how it works. So if you are in the sort of digital advertising marketing space, let's say the theme is transparency in programmatic advertising, which has been a big deal over the past few years, with GDPR being in place in the UK. And many sites you go to asking you if you accept cookies or not because of tracking from advertisers and publishers and things of that nature. So here's how you would lay down a plan like that for the C-suite or executives who might need some PR help in how to go about navigating this. You create a brief. So the first thing you want to do is name your objective, right? So let's say your objective is to enhance Company X's brand reputation as a leader in transparency, right, within the programmatic advertising industry, thereby increasing trust and engagement among advertisers, publishers, and consumers. So you got three markets. You got the advertiser who's trying to show you their product. You got the publisher, which their content and their websites is where the advertiser shows you the product as you're browsing the web. And you got the consumer, you yourself, who's just using the internet and seeing these things, whether you decide to look at them or click on them or not. So following that, you want to sort of meet up with your team and with insights from sales, product, and marketing. Sometimes you might even want to involve research as well, and analysts to figure out what the goals are. When you're talking to the C-suite, they're always going to ask you, what's the goal? Not what are you doing? What's the goal? What are you trying to achieve? So let's nail it down to three things. Goal number one, you want to raise awareness of Company X's commitment to transparency. Goal number two, you want to educate the industry and stakeholders on the importance of transparency in programmatic advertising. And goal number three, you want to drive traffic to Company X's transparency resources and tools. So these are things like white papers, thought leadership, exec reports, research, etc. Right. So now when you have that nailed down and you have buy-in from the C-suite that we're following these three goals, it's very measurable. Then you go into figuring out who your target audience is. And who are your target audiences in this scenario? They're advertisers and marketers, publishers, right? Industry influencers, regulatory bodies, right? And general public interested in digital advertising. So you've now nailed down your goals. You've now nailed down who you're trying to reach, your target audience. Here's where it gets interesting. You now need to dig deep and come with something solid. And it starts with research. So a lot of companies jump into things off the whim. We have this great idea, run with it. No, you're setting yourself up for failure. It starts with market analysis. What do I mean by that? You need to look at industry trends. So, is there an increasing demand for transparency due to fraud and brand safety issues? Yes, you tick that. Then you look at what your competitors are doing and do a solid competitor analysis, right? So what I'm talking about there is you need to identify key competitors, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what industry you're in. And you need to look at their strategies around that topic. In this instance, it's around transparency with data. Okay, so now you have 1 and 2. And along the way, you're sharing this with the entire team. You're sharing this with the CMO and the CFO and the CEO and the C-suite so they can see where this is going. It's part of storytelling internally. Then you need to look at audience insights. So what does that mean, audience insights? Sounds like some jargon. In reality, you need to understand the pain points and needs of advertisers, your client, publishers, possibly your clients as well, and consumers regarding that topic of transparency. So you need that on deck. Once you have that, you can then start to do data collection. What do I mean by that? You're now leaning on your marketing and research arm to do surveys and interviews with key stakeholders, right? That might be at conferences, events, speaking events, exhibits, sales meetings. And the idea is that you're trying to garner what's really going on real time, apart from what you're reading. What are their concerns? Then you need to do an analysis of industry reports and white papers. So in the case of sort of digital transparency in the online ad tech world, you need to be speaking with analysts, eMarketer, Gartner, Forrester, and the likes of those big research companies that really look at the data without bias, to really see what's going on, and speak with the people in the trenches, the analysts that really know what's going on, that can explain to you what the market is like. So you do an analysis of industry reports and white papers. So you're reading all the time, you're educating yourself. And of course, in today's age, you need to be monitoring social media conversations and sentiment. You need to know what your customers and your quote-unquote haters or your competitors are saying about you in order to be nimble and move. Only till you have all these things in place and have the buy-in do you move to the planning stage. A lot of times, your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need this. And you move to the planning stage immediately. You've missed all those other steps. What happens is, when you get the end result, there's no proof of how you got there. And there's no reasoning or strategy to how you were able to reach these conclusions. So let's talk about the planning phase. This is where it gets interesting. You need to sit with your team, whether it's product management, product marketing, sales, regular marketing, etc. Whoever plays a part in this whole campaign, to figure out what your key messages are. As a PR professional, you absolutely need to nail down your key messages. Because you get that story in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and they say, well, how did you get it? Maybe they just wrote about you randomly. You need to hone it down. In terms of key messages, you have to say, okay, company X, usually I'll nail it down to 3, maybe 5 at most. Don't keep it complicated. Nail it down to 3. So you're saying company X's commitment to transparent programmatic advertising is number 1. Right. Number 2, the benefits of transparency for advertisers and publishers. Right. What are the benefits for your customers? Which is what the C-suite wants to hear. It's about the bottom line. We're in the field of earned media. They're in the field of looking at metrics and looking at what was delivered. So it doesn't matter if you've pitched 100 reporters if you only got one story. Think about that. And number 3, you have to look at how Company X's tools and solutions ensure that solution to create transparency and trust within the industry so that you can steal some of your competitors' clients, or you're seen in a great light as a company that's forward-looking and doing it correctly. Does that make sense? Okay. So now you've nailed that down and everybody's on the same page. Now you've got to look at the different channels you're going to use. How are you actually going to pull this off? Are you going to smile and dial? Or are you going to be reaching out to reporters on Twitter or X? Or how do we do that? Okay, let's look at that. You work with your marketing team, and there's paid media, which is marketing. Right? Think about it this way. If the Super Bowl is going on and I pay $1 million for an ad that says, I'm New York City's most eligible bachelor, and I pay $1 million to put that message in front of 50 million people, that's advertising. If you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard that says, I'm the most eligible bachelor in New York, call me now with my phone number, that's marketing. PR is you're at dinner with your friend and your dinner says, I met this great guy the other day and I know you're single. You should probably go out with him. That's PR. It's earned media. It's completely different. So think about that. The channels you're going to use to achieve the things that you've just promised the C-suite. So there's paid media, right? LinkedIn, Google ads, display networks, etc. Let them handle that with the messaging you provided them to the right audience. There's earned media, which is where we come in. PR coverage, influencer partnerships. So we're putting our main speakers to be moderators at conferences or to give keynotes, or we're writing a white paper, or we're doing some thought leadership articles or on our blog so we seem like the experts that we are. That's where we come in. There's owned media, which is the company's own website, blog, or social media. So we're highlighting our experts within our own company. So-and-so is an analytics expert, and here is the information he's garnered. Here is what he wrote. Sometimes we're the ones that write it. It's called ghostwriting, right? So there's that aspect of it. And then there's shared media. And what I mean by that is calculating social media engagement in community forums. Who's talking? Are you talking to the wall, or are people talking back to you? Or are you getting feedback? Is what you're saying resonating? If that makes any sense. All right. So now that we've reached that, campaigns on the go, we've got the green light, we figured out our messaging, we know our channels, we know what we're saying, everyone's got their buy-in. Here's a big mistake that PR people make. You don't provide them a timeline. They're expecting it yesterday. And so they have no idea that you've reached out to the New York Times and the head reporter on that beat is on vacation or is covering something else, or they'll get back to you, et cetera, et cetera. It could be a myriad of reasons why the story hasn't come out yet. Not that they're not interested. So here's where you save yourself by creating a timeline. So you set the expectation, month 1 to 2, research and planning. Month 3, creative development and initial paid media activation. Because at the end of the day, you've got to bring in your design team also to make your brochures look good, your white papers look attractive. Make sure that the marketing team is sending the emails to the right people and tracking open rates and things of that nature. Month 4 to 6, you're looking at full-scale campaign implementation. All barrels firing. Month 7, you're now looking at evaluation and optimization, which means we've done all this work. Here's what's come in. How do we measure that as opposed to us just going out and saying this, hey, this is the news? How do we measure it against what we planned to do and the results we expected to get? And then once we get the feedback, we're able to optimize on that feedback we've garnered. All right, so let's continue. What does the implementation phase look like? There's something called creative adaptation. Hands up or leave in a comment if you know what that is. Creative adaptation, from a PR perspective, is where you sort of develop compelling and informative ad creatives that highlight that transparency idea that you're talking about, right? And you ensure that messaging is clear and consistent across all media. We're saying the same thing on our blog, we're saying the same thing on our website, we're saying the same thing on Twitter, we're saying the same thing, or X, we're saying the same thing on Instagram, LinkedIn. Salespeople are saying, we're all speaking the same language. When the salesperson goes out, he's saying the same thing that the research shows, that the designers have produced. It's a flowing, think about it as a kayak or a canoe. If one person stops paddling in the right way, it changes the direction of the canoe. We've all got to be paddling in the same direction to make this work. Okay. Now let's look at the current environment now where there's It's gone are the days where you can just put an article on Business Week and hope that all executives and financial people see it. There's so many channels where people get their news or their information today, which brings the idea of niche placements. So we want to target specific industry publications and websites frequented by advertisers and publishers. So depending on your news, it might be Ad Week, it might be Ad Age, right? It might be Business Week, it might be TechCrunch, right? It might be Medium, different blogs. It might be podcasts nowadays, right? It might be the news. It might be CNN. It might be BBC. So you got to think about that. And then you also have to utilize programmatic ad placements to reach relevant audiences with precision. Think about that. If you're singing from a high horse about how you can target audiences and get the right ad to reach the right person at the right time, where it ceases to be an ad but information and you don't know how to use it yourself, customers start to be wary. Okay, so let's move on. At paid strategies. Let's say you're trying to implement a paid LinkedIn strategy, right? So a couple things you got to look at. It's not just posting on LinkedIn and just typing your comments and hashtags. You got to look at targeting. So you have to utilize LinkedIn's targeting capabilities to reach decision makers. I repeat, decision makers, not just anyone, not just your followers or friends, decision makers in advertising and publishing. Okay. The content itself. You have to promote your white papers, which you probably helped write. And they've got to be a very high level. There's too much content now that people don't just read anything. It's got to resonate with them. Case studies, right? Here's what we did for client X, and here was the result. And here's why they're still working with us. And actually, here's why they've recommended us to other companies. Here's how we've stolen competitors' market share in business, right? Case studies. Webinars are still very important. That's where you go out and teach and show your expertise. We know what we're doing. We know what we're saying. Let's focus on that particular topic, right? And then there's the engagement aspect where you're encouraging interaction through polls, right? Did this actually resonate? Who downloaded the white paper? Did anybody reach back out to sales? Does anybody actually care? So you can do that through polls. You can do that through Q&A sessions. And people also do LinkedIn live events and things of that nature. What are we trying to measure? So marketing can go and say, we spent $1 million and we got 5,000 emails. And from that 5,000 people, 2,000 purchased and we made this amount. In PR, it's not very feasible. It's hard to measure awareness. You might see something today and not buy it till next year. So I thought, I saw these pair of sneakers that were really cool, but I don't have money right now. But 2 months later, I bought them. How do you attribute that to your work, right? So what you want to do there is you're trying to build brand awareness. You've got to put that up front. You're building brand awareness. What does that mean? You're utilizing display and video ads across digital platforms to build brand recognition. Here's what I mean. So many people don't drink sugary drinks, but they know Coca-Cola. So many people don't drink alcohol, but they know Heineken. Brand recognition doesn't mean you actually use it. So you got to build that brand recognition. And highlight company X's or whoever you're working for, their transparency initiatives and success stories. Here's who we've worked with. Here's what they were able to achieve. Here's what we did for them. Here are the results. All right, let's move on. Keyword research. In today's world, you've got to identify and target keywords related to programmatic advertising and transparency specifically, and optimize content for SEO to increase organic traffic. It's even more complicated now in the world of AI, right? You've got to add that into your mix. And then you've also got to understand regulatory changes and challenges. What I mean by that is what's going on in the UK might not be going on in the US. So in the UK, they're talking about GDPR, where at the time we're still using cookies in the US and it wasn't as strict. So you have to stay updated on global regulatory requirements related to digital advertising. You have to ensure all advertising content adhere to local laws and guidelines, right? Does that make sense? Especially if you're working for a global company. Following that, now you have to look at localized end-to-end user experience. So tailor content and ads to resonate with local markets. What sells in London doesn't necessarily sell in New York City, for example. And you have to provide resources and support in multiple languages. That's the name of the game. Now, here's where you gain your bravado and your kudos. It's in the evaluation process, especially when you're working with C-suite executives. How did you move the needle? What have you been able to achieve? Evaluation. Let's look at the metrics. Brand awareness. So, did you increase brand mentions by 30% within 6 months? That sounds great to a CMO. Was there a 25% increase in social media followers and engagement? Fantastic. Maybe you saw a 20% increase in website traffic from new users, which means more people are signing up, reading your blog, engaging with the company, and reaching out. Inbound marketing. Right. So let's look at engagement closely. 40%, let's say you had a 40% increase in interactions, likes, shares, comments on social media posts related to transparency, that particular subject that you went out to promote in the first place. That looks fantastic. A 50% increase in blog post views on transparency topics and a 35% increase in webinar registration and attendees. Whew, you're killing it. What about traffic? 30% increase in website visits to transparency-related pages. That's proof in the pudding for the product managers and the salespeople and the analysts that you've sort of bothered to give you a blog post. It was worth their while. Average time spent on these pages increased by 25%. Bravo. Lead generation. You've had 500 downloads of white papers and case studies. 300 new leads generated through LinkedIn ads and content. This is where you show why the money was spent and why it was spent well, and why they should follow your lead in the future. And then the conversion rate, which is very important. 20% increase in inquiries about transparency solutions, about that particular topic. You've increased that by 20%. 15% increase in sales or partnerships related to those transparency initiatives. You're helping sales. That's music to the ears of the C-suite. And then you look at the analysis at the end to bring it all together. Brand awareness. So you monitor brand mentions across social media platforms using tools like Hootsuite and BrandWatch and all these different AI-enabled tools nowadays that help you do that. Right? And you track follower growth and engagement metrics on social media. You can use Google Analytics to measure increases in website traffic from new users and things of that nature. There's brand awareness, and then there's engagement. It's okay, they saw it, but who engaged? Remember the example I used? You saw the billboard, you drove by it. Did you engage? All right, so you analyze social media interactions using platform analytics like LinkedIn Insights, Twitter Analytics, or X Analytics, etc. Right? You track blog post views and webinar engagement through website analytics and webinar platforms. Zoom, GoToWebinar. Who attended? Who engaged? What questions were asked? Who came back? Traffic is an obvious one, right? You can use Google Analytics to track website visits, page views, and time spent on pages, etc. And you can set up specific goals and funnels to measure the impact of campaign traffic. Right. Now comes where sales says, well, great job, but what does that do for me? I need to close sales. Lead generation. Track downloads and form submissions using CRM tools like HubSpot, Salesforce, etc. And monitor lead generation from LinkedIn campaigns through LinkedIn Campaigns Manager, right? So that satisfies sales. Okay, we did all this work. This is what you promised. You actually brought us leads. Now they can chase those leads. But more important than leads, you need conversions. Right? So you need to measure inquiries and sales through CRM and sales tracking systems, and track partnership inquiries and conversions related to that transparency initiative that you set out to talk about. And finally, reporting. This brings it full circle. Monthly reports. You're summarizing key metrics, insights, and progress towards goals, and include analysis of social media performance, website traffic, and lead generation. Quarterly reviews. Every 3 months, you assess overall campaign performance and make adjustments based on data. It's not based on we got that New York Times article. It's based on data. And you provide detailed reports on brand awareness, engagement, and conversion metrics. I'll say that again. Provide detailed reports on brand awareness, engagement, and conversion metrics. And then comes a final campaign report where you take a comprehensive review of the campaign's success. Here's what we set out to do in the beginning. Here's what we actually achieved. And here's how it's made the business better. And on top of that, you look at failures. What did we do well? What didn't we do well? What can we do better the next time? C-level executives love to hear that. So come with recommendations for future initiatives based on evaluation reports. I hope this has been comprehensive from a PR perspective and how we work with different departments and how we help elevate brands, individuals, companies, etc. in the corporate comms function and in terms of providing visibility for top brands. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll be very willing to answer them or discuss them as well as we travel together through this very complicated matrix of how PR and marketing and sales and how we elevate companies, how we sell more, how we do crisis comms and things of that nature. So I'll be dropping more episodes on how-tos on this channel. And I hope it helps you and you can sort of activate some of these ideas in your workplace. But before we go, make sure you subscribe, like the video. Helps us know what content you're enjoying. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/Samson King to support the channel. We appreciate it. We'll be starting a Patreon soon, as well as selling some merch, which we hope you'll be able to support us from that perspective. But expect more coming with insights, detailed messaging, and all things you can use in your career to progress. So, without further ado, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.